Hey race fans, welcome into the preview show here in Studio 3. I'm Alex Weaver with Kim Coon this week. It's glad to have you. Let's talk about the number 9 getting a win. It's deja vu all over again at Watkins Glen.
Yeah, it is. He did the repeat. And a lot of people are wondering, is this, them getting out of their summer slump? I think we need to wait and see how they perform in Michigan, in Bristol, Darlington coming up. But this is definitely the pop that they needed. Again, that summer slump, we didn't see them in the top 10 since June, Pocono?
7.5 weeks.
Yes, and he had a few DNFs in there too. And so they needed to spark something, especially now that we're headed closer and closer to the playoffs. And I think this did it for the team. But again, I'm going to wait and make a final answer on that until after the next couple of weeks.
Well, let's talk about Hendrick as a whole, because could this be the turnaround that they needed? Not only we've kind of seen William Byron carrying the torch for that camp here lately, but can they kind of feed off of Chase's momentum?
I hope they can. It's going to be telling the next few weeks, especially. I think the big indicator is whether or not Jimmie Johnson gets in the playoffs. Yeah. Right now, he has that final spot in the 16th. He's tied with Ryan Newman, though. He has the tiebreaker. I think if we don't see Jimmie Johnson in the playoffs, that's a big indication of where Hendrick is. But William Byron has been carrying the torch, so it was good that Chase Elliott kind of got in there and said, I'm here too. We also saw Alex Bowman win 5 weeks ago. Hendrick needs to do something, and I think this energy could just give everybody the pop they need.
All right, well, the drama at Watkins Glen was not short. Let's just say that. They were not making friends there on the track, and we've seen in 2019 a lot of drama on and off the track, but one in particular was Kyle Busch, who was just making everybody mad. So what was going on with that 18?
Kyle Busch just had a terrible weekend in general. His performance or lack of performance in the Xfinity Series race, I think that kind of carried over. Maybe mental, his headspace, he just wasn't there in the Cup Series race as well. We saw him get a run-in with Byron, a run-in with Bubba Wallace. It was just an off weekend for Kyle. I don't think it's indicative of where they are as a team. Obviously, they've got 4 wins on the season. I think it's just, you got to chalk it up to road course racing. Yep. You're racing closer quarters, you're banging with other cars. I don't think any of that's going to carry over possibly to the next weeks in terms of rivalries between him and those other 2 drivers. It was just a bad week to be Kyle Busch.
Well, we saw some chippy conversation between Ryan Blaney and Jimmie Johnson, which actually surprised me, but I was here for it. So does that drama carry on to Michigan, or do we think that we can put that to bed in Watkins Glen?
I think we're putting it to bed because Jimmie Johnson really has to focus on getting in the playoffs. Yep. And if he's worried about what other drivers are doing or keeping up, tabs on what Ryan's doing or other drivers are just doing wrong by his meter, I think he's going to get himself in a position where he's not focused enough to get on the playoffs. So I think because it's Jimmie Johnson and Ryan Blaney and just their personalities, the hatchet's going to be buried. Now, as we move into the playoffs, if Jimmie gets in the playoffs, I think he might remember some of the things that Ryan did at Watkins Glen. But right now, Jimmie, I think, focused on the playoffs, and Ryan's Ryan. I think he's over it.
All right, we're heading back to Michigan for the second time we're seeing this track. It's one of our fastest that we run on the circuit, and NASCAR did say that they're applying PJ1 this weekend. What can we expect from that fast track?
Well, we saw Joey Logano dominate in first Michigan. He led like 163 laps.
It was a runaway.
Yeah, it was a runaway. He schooled the field. He was out front. He was able to make moves. I don't know that we're going to see the same dominance from him or any team in particular because this is the second time we're going to Michigan. So the first time they were there, they had the new package. They kind of had to feel it. They started to build their notebooks. Now they can go back on what they learned in first Michigan, improve on that, and then to your point, they've added traction compound to the racing surface. So that's going to increase the number of racing grooves, hopefully increase the number of passes we see. So I don't know that we're going to see a driver just run away with the race like we did earlier in the season, but I do think we'll see some teams rise to the top.
We had Kim yesterday on Backseat Drivers, another show on NASCAR.com, and you mentioned that you think that it might be Joe Gibbs Racing or Team Penske versus the field. Are you still sticking with that?
I am still sticking with that. I think we're going to see the dominance from JGR there, specifically from Kyle Busch and Martin Truex Jr. Although Eric Jones and Denny Hamlin, Denny's had a little bit of a hot season. Yeah, he is creeping. He has turned it on. And then Eric Jones, too, is having this run that we haven't seen from him, I think, collectively in his Cup Series career. So I don't think you can count Denny or Eric out in that JGR camp. I do think it's probably likely going to be a Kyle or a Martin Truex Jr. in victory lane. And then Team Penske, that Ford power, they're certainly going to be doing some numbers on the field. But if you go back and you look at the finish, the top 5 finishers in the first race, it was actually a mixed bag. We had Team Penske in there, we had CGR in there, SHR, JGR. So I think we could see some of the same where a lot of guys have the opportunity to be out front, especially if that traction compound does what it's there to do and allows people to make passes.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what SHR does this weekend.
Yes.
Kevin won this race last year in 2018, so I'm interested to see what they do. Well, let's also lock in our picks because that's part of the preview show here. I'm going to put you on the hot seat. So who are you going with to get in victory lane at Michigan?
It's going to make me sweat here. I'm going to go with Kyle Busch.
Okay.
It's hard not to.
Right.
Adam Stevens, I think he is so good at making calls, especially in situations where it's imperative. Michigan gets to a point where sometimes strategy comes into play, especially fuel strategy. I'm going to go with Kyle Busch.
Well, we know that Kyle Busch, being frustrated from Watkins Glen, might transfer over to a win here at Michigan.
I'm hoping.
All right, well, I'm going to stick with the Team Penske pick, the Ford camp coming out of Michigan, and I am going to take the defending champ, Joey Logano. He got it done there earlier this season. It's going to happen again.
It's a good pick.
All right, well, you can see how our picks do and who finds victory lane at Michigan coming up on Sunday at 3 p.m. on NBC SN. We'll see you guys next time.